Welcome on in, Guild fans. It's your boy, Gsluke, here with our Round 3 live stream for the Players' Championship. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure tomorrow. But first off, a look at the prop side of things, a look at the weather report, how that'll impact Round 3. And spoiler alert, going to be a big impact out there for tomorrow. We'll go over any of your questions down there in chat, whether it's a prop that you guys want me to go through or maybe a matchup bet over there on the sports books. Just let me know down there in the chat. But wherever you guys are, hopefully you're having a fantastic Friday and are ready to get into everything over the weekend. Got Michael down there giving me some kind words on my $5 GPP lineup. I've got a few up there towards the top, so I appreciate that. Hopefully we can take something down. It'll be extra fun out there in person. We got Joseph down there as well, always early to the party. Phil down there as well, who says that JT went nuclear. In fact, he did. And yeah, your boy Im also went out there and made the cut. So hey, cheers to him out there. We got a little Tito's and lemonade over here in the cup. It's maybe not my usual drink that I go to, but because of all the sawgrass splashes that I've had out there in the course, well, just makes sense to keep it consistent with the vodka. So what's going on, Derek? We also got Joseph down there too. Yeah, the wins are on the way, man, and it is going to be an absolute blast over the weekend. I don't think people understand how hard this course can get when it has that deep rough and they add a little bit of wind into the equation. And yeah, we're going to get exactly that. So if you guys are just tuning in, go ahead, smash the like button if you guys haven't already, and go ahead and also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. And yeah, some Tito's and fresh grapefruit. That is so much better than this, dude. I wish I had some grapefruit down there in there. It's I'm a basic bitch this week, right? Just went to the liquor store, said, hey, give me some Tito's and a little bit of a mixer. And this is what we ended up with. But hey, grapefruit sounds absolutely awesome. You're saying anyone that faded JT's in piss? If you faded JT today, you're an absolute donkey because JT is an absolute baller. If you thought he was going to go out there and lay on the sword, then you don't know Justin Thomas. I got to see a lot of that round today. So yeah, if you were one of those people, maybe learn your lesson from that. You shouldn't be fading Justin Thomas. Would I compare the first round of API to the conditions over the weekend? I don't think it's going to be as bad, Jordan. So we'll go through the forecast here in a second. It's not quite on that sort of level when it comes to the conditions, but it will be quite a bit harder. And of course, yeah, Derek, you can ask any DFS questions that you want to. I know I did that live stream over there on the Ship It Nation channel before, but I've got to say, guys, hey, over here on the Gsluke channel, I feel like I like you guys maybe just a little bit more. Maybe it's the lack of haters that we have over here. For whatever reason, when I go live over there, I've got some assholes that decide to always show up in chat. So yeah, dude, any DFS questions, feel free to go ahead and fire over here. If anything, I'd rather answer them over here because I can give you guys my full take on it without feeling like I have to hold back a little bit. Of course, right over there, I got to keep things a little bit to the script when it comes to what's on the Ship It channel. But yeah, dude, any questions, feel free to go ahead and fire, right? We're over here on this channel, and I'm still willing to give you guys my takes. No worries about that. Let's talk about the conditions from round 2, which honestly, these aren't going to matter that much, right? Round 2 was easier than round 1, partially because the winds were lower for most of the day, but also the temperatures weren't nearly as low in the morning. So what you can see here is the birdie average went from like 3.5 per round up to about 4. Bogey average went from about 3.65 per round down to about 3.04, which honestly doesn't matter because when you take a look at the forecast for tomorrow, it looks completely different. In fact, the wind gusts are going to be a massive factor out there for Saturday. It's going to be 25 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts for most of the day. And then Sunday is much of the same. Now, this is the HRRR forecast and hasn't quite updated for all of Sunday quite yet. But you can see over here, just like Joseph was kind of talking about, it is going to be an absolute brute at this golf course. In fact, I think it's going to play well over par the last 2 days because with water on play of the 17 of the 18 holes, also 4, maybe even 4.5 inch rough, this place is not going to be easy. In fact, that 1 over par scoring average that you had for the first half of Thursday is, I think, going to be even worse over there for tomorrow. So, you know, something like 1, maybe even 1.5 over par. I do think that they're going to soften up some pin locations. I also think they're going to move up tee boxes like 12 to make it drivable over there for tomorrow. So I don't think the scoring average is going to be like drastically harder. Like I don't think it's gonna be like a +4 or +3 scoring average, but something like 1.5 over par is likely in the cards over there for tomorrow. So in terms of our props, I think we should mostly be looking at fades. And just to confirm over here, right, it's not just this HRRR forecast. NEM has the winds up the entire day. Medio Blue has the winds, especially the gusts, high the entire day. Icon model, GFS, right? They're all telling us pretty much the same story, that it's going to be extremely blustery tomorrow. So to go back to these averages, scoring average, like I said, relatively over par. And I think your birdie average is going to go down to probably about 3.5 per round at the very most. Bogey average is going to be at least like 3.5 per round. And I think that both could be even harder, right, than what I just forecasted for. Like if the birdie average was 3 per round, it wouldn't be all that surprised. And if the bogey average was like 4, even 4.5 per round over there for tomorrow, I also wouldn't be completely mind blown. Fairway average likely returning to less than an 8 per round average. And then the green and regulation average, which is about 10.5 per round, 10.7 over there for round number 1, might even be close to 10.5 or 10 per round over there tomorrow. These sort of wind gusts aren't anything that we can ignore, especially when you're at a difficult golf course like this. And what I'll say about the pin locations for round 2 is that they were relatively soft for all things considered. Now, out here with the conditions that we're expecting out there for round 3, the tour has accounted for some of that. So you'll see that with some of the pin locations that we go through. But hole number 1 back here in the back left corner, that is not one of the easier pins. In fact, this pin location out here for round 3 might be the hardest that we have at that hole. So what you'll see here with some of these pins is that they're not going overly easy on these players. Like there are a few that are for sure easier, but that's a round 3 setup, right? It's a moving day setup out there on tour. Like for example, 12, that'll be a drivable par 4 most likely. Right? There's going to be slightly easier holes out there, but with the conditions, I mean, this could be absolutely brutal. Going to hole number 2, this is a par 5. This will be in the back right corner. I would say maybe a slightly harder pin than today just because the up and down isn't as straightforward, but I don't think it's that much different than what you had for round number 2. More so the wind that is going to make up that difference. Hole 3 is over here on the front right corner, maybe like middle right is the better way to put it, close to where my cursor is right here. I would say it's about the same kind of pin that you had for today. The reason why it's maybe not harder, even though it's a little bit longer than today, is just because it's a short par 3 to begin with, right? It's like 160 yards as opposed to maybe 165, 170 yards over here to this pin. And because it's a front pin location, it maybe made it a little bit harder to get close to that pin just because you didn't have that much room to work with. Now it's over here on the right side. I would say it's maybe a slightly easier location. Hole number 4 is in this back left corner. This is a harder pin location than today. It is on the low spot of the screen, but it does bring that water into play, which of course with those wind gusts tomorrow is going to be a factor. Hole number 5 is one of the hardest holes out here, and it's going to be on this right side of the green, which I would say is maybe an easier pin location than today, just because some of the up and downs to this pin would be a little bit easier than what you had out there for round 2, but it's not drastically easier, right? It's still a hard shot because like 190 yards, maybe even 200 yards over here into the screen, and you don't have a whole lot of room to work with there. Hole 6 is where you have the tree overhanging, so that is going to be a middle left pin location. So down here on this low spot that you have over here, I would say that this is one of the few easier pins that we have out there for tomorrow. Hole number 7 is going to be a like middle right pin, so it's not quite like a front pin, but it is towards the front of this complex, about where this number 2 is actually, is where the pin is going to be. I would say it's a little bit easier than today as well. Going to hole number 8, so hole 8 is going to be a middle left pin location, which I would say is about the same as what you had for today. It's about the same length as what you had for round number 2, and about as protected, I'd say, as well. Not really easier or harder over there at hole 8. Next up, we're going to hole 9, which is going to be a front pin, and this, of course, is going to be a par 5. So I would say that this is pretty spot in line with round number 2. You can see in round 2, it was also at the front side of the screen. Now it's just going to be towards this front right corner, which really doesn't change all that much. Going over to hole 10 is in the back corner of the screen. It is much harder than today. So kind of like hole 1, right? Holes 1 and 10 are not going to be easy tomorrow. Hole number 11 is a par 5. So this one is in the front right corner. I would say maybe a little easier than what you had for today just because it's a shorter shot in. But most players, right, are going to be missing this green around the green, and the up and down, right, to this front right corner as opposed to the middle right corner has little to no difference. It's pretty much the same shot, regardless of that pin location. Hole 12 is the one that they're likely going to move up. I would say that there's a more than 60% chance that this is going to be a drivable par 4. If that's the case, right, this middle left pin makes a whole lot more sense because it's hard. If you hit it to the left here, anything with spin to the left will actually run down the slope and into the water. But because it's a drivable par 4, I think it's a little bit more fair to ask of these players. Hole 13 is a middle back pin. It's over here towards the right side as well, towards the middle back. I would say it's a little bit easier than today, but it is not an easy pin by any means. Back here in the back right corner, you have the slope in front of it that makes things a little bit difficult, and it's a longer shot in. Hole 14 can play extremely difficult depending on wind direction. Today it was downwind. Tomorrow it is going to be in this back left corner, which I would argue is by far the hardest pin at this pin location. And even if it plays downwind like today, like this pin would play over par. Now, if it plays to a side wind or even into the wind, like it might be for tomorrow, this would be maybe the hardest hole that you have on the golf course. And today, right, it played under par. It's not going to play anywhere near that tomorrow, no matter what, let alone if it plays into the wind. So we have 15, which is a back right middle pin location. It's like back on this back shelf towards the back right side. I would say a harder pin than today just because you have this slope towards the middle of the green, which does make getting it close a little bit harder, and it's a longer shot in. 16 is a par 5, so that one is going to be in this front left corner. I would say that this is an easier pin than today, and it's a moving day setup, right? We'd expect some easier pins, especially with the fact that they have some wind coming through. And at 17, a lot harder than what you had for today. A lot of times they play the pin over here in the front for round 3, but they're playing it in the back right corner, which has me thinking that this hole could lead to some carnage tomorrow, especially with the wind that they're forecasting. And then finally, 18, one of the hardest holes on the golf course, is going to be a back pin location. Now, it's not tucked towards the water, but it is in the back side of this green, which I would argue is a harder pin than what you had for days 1 and 2. Right? Day 2 was on the right side, which was a little bit of a shorter shot, but day 1, you had this backstop to work with, and it was towards the front side of this green. So going through these pins, when I was going through them on the DFS stream earlier, I didn't think they were that bad, right? I thought there was like a couple easy ones, a couple hard ones. For sure, there are a couple that are easy bones over here on moving day, but a lot of these pins aren't easy, like especially on the harder holes like 18. Like 17 is going to be dicey with all that wind that they have. 14, 15 are some of the harder holes that you have out there. 4 with that water to the left, like 8, right? 8's not an easy pin with a 230-yard par 3, which could be playing in the wind out there to tomorrow. I think the scoring average is going to be over par, like almost for sure over there for round number 3. I guess the question is how much, because, I could see it only being a half a stroke over par if they move up some tee boxes. But if they don't take it easy on these players, which I've got to say, kind of going through these pins, it doesn't look like they're going to be going easy on these players. I could see it playing 1 to even a whole 2 strokes over par. So I think it's going to be a drastic difference than what you had for the first few days, which usually leads to some pretty good scoring. I shouldn't say scoring, pretty good watching, I should say, over there from us fans. I like to see these guys struggle over there on the course, right? See them, go out there and make some bogeys from time to time. And that is for sure what we're going to see with these kind of conditions. So let's go over here to PrizePicks now, figure out we're going to go out there and actually enter, which I haven't taken a look at the board yet. So I have literally no idea where this pricing is going to come in. So you guys are going to get literally my first look over here at the board. So if you have any specific takes, any specific bets you guys want me to go through, go ahead and let me know. But let's hop on into this thing. So let's go back to the last comment, which I think was Joseph here. Said, good for you to tell the losers off. Yeah, dude. I guess you saw the live stream that I did a little bit ago. I'm going to do that. I'm always that sort of guy, right? Like, if you're going to talk shit to me, I'm not the kind of person to just take it and move by. I have a little bit of a backbone. I'm a competitive person, and yeah, I'm going to do that. So, hey, I hope they come into this live stream so I'm going to do it again, because it's fun to tee off on absolute idiots, right? When they have a room temperature IQ of like 60, 70, it's really easy to tell them off. Let's put it that way. What's going on, Golf? Says Scotty is frustrating, but you think he's close to being back. I'm totally with you on that take. It is frustrating, right, to see him only shooting a few under par every single round, but he's shooting a few under par, which is a lot of people would take that, right, out there at these given events. and he's not playing well, right? So imagine when he gets this thing figured out. Do I know if they're watering the greens? Commentators mentioned it being a possibility. Even if they do, Mark, right, it's going to play significantly harder tomorrow. I would say that there's a good chance they do, right? Obviously, with these kind of wins, they know that they have to make the course a little bit more scoreable. But with those wins, throwing darts is going to be extremely difficult to do. So I would say a good chance that they do, Mark, but it doesn't worry me really at all. I still think it'll play significantly more difficult. You said, is it a good strategy to use all of your 150 lineups on players that are playing before 10:30? So I would probably do the 90-60. So you mentioned like the ones with 90 AM and then 60 mixed. I'd go with that second difference just because I do think some like mid to later starters could play well. I mean, even the guys that are going off early, they're still going to have windy conditions. Just to go back to this forecast over here for half the round, right? Like even if you're an 820 starter, one of the first guys out there, I mean, by the time it's midday, the winds have kicked up. So I would say that it's okay to have some of those later guys mixed in. Like, I don't think it's the kind of slate where you only play guys, right? Starting between like, 8 to 10 or something like that. But I would favor those players for sure. Like if you're choosing between somebody going off early and somebody late, all things are even, let's say ownership, projection are all the same, then yeah, take the early guy. But yeah, it's not one where you have to only play early guys. So I'd go with the second one there. You think the tough conditions over the weekend will suit Fleetwood and Scotty? Dude, I hope it suits Fleetwood. Also, Colin Morikawa, who I bet outright. Those are two of my top plays for this weekend. You said Morikawa's going to crumble. I hope not. We'll see, though. Hey, if you're right, I'll give you the tip of the cap, Joseph. You said JT and Spieth. I hope they play well as well. Obviously, you guys know I'm a huge fan of those two. When I think about the strokes lines for holes 1 and 9 or 10 through 18, I can't see them, Kim. So I can't look at the underdog board over here on this computer. But if you let me know the projections, then I can let you know because I honestly have no idea. Jack says these windy conditions could suit Tommy Ladd. Look at that. There's two people that think Tommy Ladd's going to play well. Dude, I bet him outright this week for like the first time in years. So I would certainly be okay with him getting the job done. Gusty wins and tough pins. It's just time to play Spieth and lean into the chaos. Hey, you know what we could do, Chris? I haven't seen the birdie line on Spieth yet, but if you give me like 3.5 or 4 birdies, I might be thinking an over on birdies for sure. Is Tommy Fleetwood worth the win at plus 1,800? Honestly, plus 1,800, I thought it'd be like plus 1,000 at this point. That doesn't seem like a terrible number. And of course, yeah, I'll answer any of the questions that you have. And thank you out there with the good luck question there. All right, so let's find some props. So I literally haven't gone through the board quite yet. It doesn't look like they have anything posted for birdies over here on PrizePicks, but the strokes lines are 1.5 to 2 over par, which with these sort of conditions is kind of what I was expecting to see. But I thought there was a chance that you'd have guys under par. Now, you have Rory at like 0.5 under. You have guys like Colin also at 0.5 under par. So it's not like they have the entire, board over par. But this feels like maybe a little bit of an overreaction out there from the lines makers. Only reason I say that is because they are going to soften the course up, right? 12 is going to be a drivable par 4. You're going to have some tee boxes moved up to the par 3s. That's almost always what they do over here with this sort of setup. I mean, looking at the odds over here, they have a lot of guys at 72.5. Like, I mean, Poston, right? He's 72.5. I know he's just a little bit over, but he's down at that sort of number. McIntyre, can't lay there, right? About even money over there at 72.5. Now, Scotty here, right? 72.5. And he's about even money. Let's find Rory. Obviously, Rory playing pretty well this week, but just to compare him to the sportsbook lines, kind of looks like PrizePicks just copied Draftkings, maybe copied Fanduel with their lines, and then went out there and ended up playing props. So I've got to say, I was kind of hoping that we'd have birdie lines to go through, also lines like greens and, bogeys, that sort of thing, even fairway lines to go through, as obviously I keep track of all of that. But I'd say in general, I do think it's going to be difficult tomorrow. So I kind of agree with what they did here with the pricing, but having everyone 2 strokes over par, I don't agree with that, right? I just told you guys, I think the scoring average could be between 0.5 to maybe 2 strokes over par at the very worst. It's like they projected this board thinking that's a worst case scenario, which, hey, that might be the case, right? It might play to like a +2 scoring average, but I also think that there's a chance with some of those course changes that maybe it's only like a stroke over par that you have there for tomorrow. So if it was only going to play a stroke over par, players like a Pendrith that are here at 73.5, to shoot +1 or better, that might be a spot. that I'm willing to go out there and enter. And just to kind of go through this a little bit more, like a Harris English, right? He likes harder conditions. Him to shoot +1 doesn't feel like the worst play. Same thing with guys like a Lucas Glover. And, a lot of times our instant intuition, right, when we see conditions like this is to go out there and enter overs. But it all depends on the pricing, right? It all depends on where they're actually going to post the board here. And everyone on here is like 2 strokes higher than what they were for today. Now, might it play 2 strokes harder? Yes, right. It might play like a stroke and a half over par. But if it plays closer to that 0.5 to 1 stroke over par, like I at least think it's possible, right? I don't know if I'd say it's likely, but I'd say it's possible that it only plays like 0.5 to 1 stroke over par. There'd be a lot of value on taking these unders. Now, let's say it plays as hard as it possibly could. Let's say it plays like 2 strokes over par, like to a 74 average. Then a lot of these would make sense, right? So I think the value at this point, at least as of my first look at this board, would be on unders because let's say it plays to the worst possible scoring average. Let's say it plays to a 74. Like that's legitimately where I think at worst it would come in tomorrow. Pendrith is 0.5 strokes better than the average. An average, he is better than that over there on the PGA Tour, right? He's an above average player. So you'd expect him, right, to be at like 73 and a half strokes. Guys like Hostler, Jaeger, they're like average players in this sort of field. Thagala, right? Just like a Pendrith, a little bit better than your average player that you have in this kind of field, projected 0.5 strokes better than that field average. So I would say that at least as of my first look at this board, and it's crazy. I know it's not really comfortable when you see those kind of conditions, but the value seems to be on some of these unders. So just to check, right, Bhatia, Minwoo, right, a lot of people seem to be betting those too. Let's see what the sportsbook odds say on those. So Minwoo, we can see is even money at about 73 and a half. And then Bhatia here is minus 140 for the under. So, if we can find a plus EV player like Akshay Bhatia, like we have here for minus 140, I'm going to be willing to take their under because, like I said, I think this board might actually be projected a little bit too high for the kind of conditions that we're going to get. So let me see what Fleetwood's up here at. So Fleetwood's at 72 and a half. And look at that, right? He's minus 140 for the under. This is uncomfortable, guys. I won't lie about it. But this feels like the plus EV play to go out there and play this board. So we're going to enter this for $100. This is a 2.75x slip over there with those two. And like I said before, the idea with these is I know it's going to play difficult, but shooting +1 even par, it's not asking these guys to do anything drastic, right? It's just asking them to go out there and have an okay day. Remember that 12 is likely going to move out to be a drivable par 4. You've got some softer moving day pin locations. Maybe them watering the greens, right? We had the question from Mark before about whether they were going to go out there and maybe add some water. They do that sort of thing. Then we're really cooking right out here on these sort of props. So that'll be the first slip that we take. It'll be those two over there on the PrizePicks side. Maybe we'll add something more here. I've got a dinner reservation at 10:30, so I do got to cut this off here relatively soon. But let me see what we got down there in the chat. Sorry if you missed it, but JT is winning this. I hope he does, Joe, dude. I mean, he had a hell of a round out there today. And I've got to say, watching him out there on the golf course today, he played as well as anyone that I've ever seen. So I don't know if I'm going to talk you off of that one. Most of the later starters are at 36 and a half for holes 1 through 9. So front 9 did look a little bit soft, I'd say, especially like the last 4 or 5 holes. Pin locations maybe looked a little bit easier. 36 and a half seems like a pretty good line though. Shane Lowry to finish top 5 is plus 3,000. Is that a decent long shot? Yeah, so the early tee time does help, especially if the wind really kicks up as the day goes on. Plus 3,000, though, I mean, you know what you're getting yourself into, right? It's a long shot to begin with. He's just hardly making the cut. But it's going to be like that Saturday and Sunday, and he's one of the best hard conditions grinders that we have. I think that's a pretty good bet, at least if you know it's a long shot, right? Like, know what you're getting yourself into. You wanted to bet Colin, but he's burned you too many times. Yeah, I don't bet him all that much, so I guess I don't have that same sort of scar tissue, but I got there, right? He's in my betting card this week. He said his top 10 in ties are plus 900. Yeah, I think the top 5 might be pushing it a little bit, but maybe you go over there to the plus 900. Jake, you're funny. You said you're a turd burglar. Okay, dude. I honestly don't know what that means, but you made me laugh. Good for you. You said the strokes are 11.5 for holes 1, 2, and 3. So they did the same thing over there for today. I actually thought that there was about a coin flip today. If anything, I'd take the over at that sort of number. What type of golfer profile would I be looking for in Showdown? Maybe some better scramblers. I'd be looking for guys that are really good iron players, which is usually the case over there for Showdown. And the reason I say that is normally when you have hard conditions like we're getting, the cream rises to the top, right? And normally the best players in the world are your best iron players. So I would go that way. Thank you, Derek. Draftkings has a new round prop for fairways, bogeys, etc. Yeah, I noticed that. And also birdies. You may have noticed that, Mark, up there for a lot of players. You had the beauty of PrizePicks today, but Nick Taylor couldn't get it under. Damn. Yeah, dude, Nick Taylor didn't have a good week. Fortunately, I didn't go down with the ship there myself, but hey, let's run it back for tomorrow, right? Let's try and get into the positive over there with that slip. Alrighty, guys, I've got to get to dinner tonight, so that's all I've got over there for this side. Of course, I'm going to have a lot more exposure than I'm getting to, so for all the 3-balls matchup bets that I end up placing, make sure to join the Patreon page for all of that, as well as all the Underdog and PrizePicks slips that I'm entering over there as well. There's going to be a lot more to come, probably at least 4, maybe 5 slips over there for moving day. So for all of that, make sure to join the Patreon page for all of those as soon as they drop. Link in the description of the video to go out there and join that, as well as any 3-balls and matchups that I can enter too. But, like I said, I've got to get out to dinner here. I'm going to do some more research while I'm eating over dinner out there on the prop side of things. So stay tuned for all of that over there on the Patreon. That's all I've got, guys. Appreciate you showing all the love over here on the channel as you always do. Smash the like button if you haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of that content to come. And of course, out there for round 4, we're doing the same thing that we did here. So make sure to stop on by out there tomorrow night for all the content for Sunday. But that's all I've got. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys later.